Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, February 6th, and class is back in session. I am Michael Carls. We are brought to you by Coachella Sports and Entertainment Stadium Authority, and I am here live at Big Rock Golf and Pub looking over the beautiful green yet again. It's a sunny day out here in Palm Springs. Let me just hop in to get the recaps for our scores from yesterday. For the Tuesday games, we had girls water polo matchups. For Division 4, La Quinta just completely destroyed Vista Murrieta 22-3. They will be moving on to the next round. Division 4, Great Oak just squeaks by Xavier Prep 6-5. So that will end the Xavier Saints season, and congrats to them on making it to the playoffs this year. Division 5, Citrus Valley takes care of Palm Springs 16-6. Tough one for the Aztecs. And so for Division 6, Palm Springs beats Canyon Springs 10-4. So they will be moving on in the Division 6 playoffs. For boys soccer, we did have one matchup for Division 4 for a wild card spot. Cathedral City beat Pasadena 2-1. So they will be heading to the first round of the boys soccer Division 4 playoffs. It's a bit of a slow day for class today. We are going to get into some segments, but I do want to go over the games that we do have for this evening. For girls soccer, we're starting off in Division 4. Division 4, we have A.B. Miller traveling to Palm Desert tonight at 5 p.m. The Aztecs are hosting. Next, we have for Division 4, La Quinta. They will be traveling to Bloomington, also at 5 o'clock tonight. Division 5, Rialto will be coming to Cathedral City. They also will be playing at 5 p.m. tonight, if you want to check that out. Division 5, Coachella Valley will be traveling to Anaheim for their game this evening. Division 6, Palm Springs will be playing a 3 o'clock game going to New View Bridge, and the Indians will be looking to get a win out there. For Division 7, Desert Mirage will be traveling to St. Pius, St. Matthias. That's out in Downey, and that will be at 5 p.m. And Division 7, Desert Hot Springs will be going to Buckley. And those are our games for Wednesday today. We will be having some boys soccer games tomorrow that we will be going over. So like I said, I want to today in class, I want to challenge our athletes. So for these segments, it's more of a just like a question or a quiz, and I want to see what students are really doing in their off season or during the season. Are they really being or using all of their time properly? So the first question that I have here is, how many books have you read or are you starting to read? So one of the things that in high school, or at least when I was growing up, that I wish I did more was just read and gain knowledge, whether it is in something that I enjoy or whether it was like a story or fiction or something like that. Just gaining that knowledge of new words and being able to coherently speak and sound more mature when you're talking to adults. And I think that is something that student athletes need to work on, especially when you're in front of the camera. Most of the time, those kids have not been taught what to say or how to act or what are the right things to do in those situations. So I think by just reading a lot helps you gain a better knowledge of the English language. Number 2, and this one is crazy because we did go over video games pretty heavily on one of our episodes and how they can be beneficial, but I do have this question. If you're in a sport right now like you're in the middle of your season, or you're getting ready for a season, like say for spring, like it's track or baseball. How the heck do you have time for video games during the week? Like, especially when I was in high school, or just even at any level, really. During the week, if I had practice, that took up that was my free time. I didn't have time for video games during the week because I have to get my schoolwork done, and I have to do all the other things that I need to do around the house. That, video games need to be put on the back burner during the week. That's something that needs to be saved for the weekend. That's what weekends are for you to relax and recharge. And it almost ends up being a reward for you, or something you look forward to for the weekend, right? So if that's something that you really enjoy and it's video games, you need to make sure that you're using your time effectively to get everything else done first, because that is just a leisure. That's something you do leisurely. That's in your free time. That's something that's really not going to help with your schoolwork or help you take the trash out, right? So just understand, like, don't spend all of your time on those video games. Yes, they're nice, good getaway, but let's put those down during the week and let's get our work done. Next, I want to address social media, right? Especially for this generation and the young kids that use the Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter and all of that. Just one thing I just have to say is that all the social media, that's all well and good, and it's all good stuff, and we all have them, and we're using it right now as we're Facebook Live, right? So just be careful. Be careful what you post. Be careful what you say. Be careful what things people see, because number one, as we've seen from professional athletes, some of the things that you've said in high school or even younger can come back and affect your image when you become a pro. A perfect example was the gentleman that was pitching in the All-Star game and gives up 2 home runs, and then 2 hours later has to deal with the social media talking about his inappropriate language he used on his Twitter, right? So let's be careful what we say and do on social media. And before we hit send, let's just make sure that we double check what it is, what we're reading, what the video is, whatever it is. Let's make sure that that's something that we would want everyone in the world to see. The person recruiting me, our teachers, our parents, all of that. Let's just make sure that it's above the line and that we're doing things in a proper manner. Okay. The big segment we are going to go over today after the break, I want to break down what it truly means to be a student athlete, right? We've talked a lot about the athletic parts of it, right? The highlight tapes and playing on the field and all of those accolades, right? But we forget that there is a word first in front of athlete, and that's student. And we need to understand that that is the most important part when we talk about student athletes and prep athletics. Okay, so we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, this is Clahs. And we are back in class. I am Michael Carls, and we are brought to you by Coachella Sports and Entertainment Stadium Authority. I am here live at Big Rock Golf and Pub. I did just get the chicken fingers the other day, and yes, bomb.com. So if you want to come down, have some great food, check out some sports. Basketball is right in the thick of things, so they will be on every screen if you want. Right now, I knew they got some, thank goodness, they got some football on for me, having some football withdrawals. But so let's get back into things. And we were talking about before the break, we were talking about being a student athlete, right? It's not just about your play on the field or on the court or, in the pool or whatever the case is, right? It's the first word. It's being a student. That's what's most important. And we're going to go over those things and how that affects you moving forward onto college and furthering your education. So first, I want to ask, how are you making an impact when not playing sports, right? So like in the off season or just in season in general too, are you doing your best in the classroom, right? Are you really giving your full effort of excelling to your highest point and being able to get the best grades that you can possible? Because I have to ask this too. When did it become cool to just skate by and barely pass classes and okay, well, I only need a 2.0 to play? When was that cool? Growing up, I always thought it was cool to have the best grades and be the best at everything. And in the classroom, the best student athletes will compete in any setting, and they will always strive to be the best. And you want to compete with the other students that may not be competing with you on the field or in athletics, right? And they want to compete with you too, right? So it's almost like a give and take with everyone of always trying to do your best. And if one person is doing their best, then it feels like everyone else will try to do their best too. But if you're the cool guy that just sits in the back and funny jokes and I'm just going to barely do stuff, well, then you just set a certain impression of yourself that you may not want people to have of you. And I give you an example of somebody that just completely blew the doors off of me when I first got into. This was my very first class of high school. My very first class. I'll never forget it. First period English. First period English. Very first class. The girl that sat next to me, she introduced herself. She said, "Hello, my name is so-and-so, and I'm going to be the valedictorian of our class our senior year." And I went, this is my first day of high school. You're already telling me you're going to be the number one student in our entire class 4 years from now? That's ridiculous. Okay, hi, I'm Mike. I play football, right? So, and it was so funny because that girl was true to her word, and 4 years later she's given the valedictorian speech at our high school graduation. And it's crazy the competition that's out there, not even on the athletic side of things. So if you're not taking school seriously, plus you don't get the scholarships or the looks you want from the certain schools, now you're kind of stuck behind the eight ball, because now you're picking schools that now you may not be playing sports moving forward, but now you're competing against other kids that are doing other things that aren't doing sports either and have good grades, right? So keep that in mind, that everybody is always competing, whether you're on the field or not. Okay? My next thing is, are you taking SATs or your ACTs seriously? And that's such a huge part when schools accept you into their universities, just not even being a student athlete, right? Yes, as student athletes, they do look at your SATs and ACTs, and you do need a certain minimum and requirement and stuff like that, right? So you need to make sure that that's part of school, that's part of the testing, that's the whole deal. So you need to take that seriously. When you wake up to go to those at 8 a.m. and you don't want to be there, you got to turn it on and say, let's go, I need this. Because if not, if you don't get the number that you need or want, you may have to do it all over again. And I remember being one of those guys that just wanted to just always keep getting the best score or get the best one that I could. So I took the SATs, 3-4 times, right? So just make sure that you don't slack on that. And when you do have an opportunity to take like a pre-SAT test or maybe like an SAT prep class, take those seriously and take those tips to heart and really apply them when you're taking those tests. Because I know not everyone is a good test taker, and those type of tests are the worst, right? We hate those bubble type tests, and you have to finish in a certain time, and it's okay to answer some and leave some blank, and you want to rig the system, this, that, and okay, whatever, right? Just study and do your best, and take all of the tips that you've learned from your regular day-to-day classes and from your teachers and apply them to those types of tests also. Next, I want to compare, or not compare, but I actually want to show how high school is, it's so necessary for you to be successful in college, and all of the things that you do in high school will directly apply to what you're doing in college, right? So in high school, you're building a foundation for, if you have intentions on going to college, you are building a foundation of how you are going to treat school when you're in college, right? So I say this meaning, if I have a certain type of habits that I always do and they always work for me in high school, well, I'm going to just keep using them in college. An example for me would be writing essays. When I used to write essays in high school, I would wait last minute jack and always try to finish them at the end, and I'd always end up with a good grade in them, an A or a B, somewhere in that range. And so that habit that I had built in high school, just used it directly in college. And so at times that maybe wasn't the best thing to do, just because, you're always stressed out trying to rush and do all of these things, rather than if you just planned it out and did it in a timely manner, you can just calmly finish your work and almost, you might even do a better job. Okay, so let's start forming good habits and building a good foundation in high school so you can move on and use those in college. Because when you're in college, nobody is there to bail you out. Nobody is there to help you. You are literally on your own, especially if you go to a massive university and you're in a massive lecture hall of 200, 300 kids. You're no longer Michael Carls. You're student number 531B3619, right? So there's tons of students, and the teacher doesn't have time to wait and hold your hand for you. And, oh, I didn't get that note. Too bad. We're moving on. There's so much stuff going on that you have to stay on top of it. Okay? And last thing for high school, when you finally do get to a point where you need to use all of these skills that you've learned and apply them in real life or at your next stop of education or wherever it is, you'll actually appreciate it a lot more and appreciate that you've learned all these tools. Because some kids, and that's where the advantage and disadvantage and upper hand on one or the other helps, because some kids don't learn those things until later on, and that will help you be more successful in job interviews and in day-to-day life in general. Next, I want to talk about being a well-rounded person, right? Okay, so what does that mean, being a well-rounded person? We talk about being a student. We talk about being an athlete, right? Those are the two words that's all we are. We're a student athlete, right? No. Are you doing things that you don't get recognition for? And so I talked earlier about being above the line. That means doing all of the things that you're supposed to, and doing the right things, and making sure you're on top of everything that you need to do. And so one of the examples of that would be, how are you at home? How do you treat your parents? Like, is it an instance where you can be this great kid around others, and people think you're just such a nice guy or a nice girl or this, that, and then you get at home and you're just like a turd to your parents or your siblings or this, that, the other, and it doesn't correlate to how you really are in the outside world, right? So let's make sure that we're treating everyone the same, whether we're in public or not. Okay, that's such a huge thing, and I think we take for granted our parents, especially early on in high school, because they're the ones that have to pick us up and drive us around, and we have to go here and be at that meeting there, and 5 a.m. practices there, and we never really get to say thank you too much. So make sure you're treating your parents with respect, and when you mess up and they have to take away your car keys or something like that, that's not just hurting you, that's hurting them too, because now they have to fit you into their schedule because of what you're doing that's messing them up. Okay, so let's make sure that we're treating our parents right and treating our families right when we're at home. And that also ties into doing your chores, right? Making sure, just like last night, shout out to DFA football. We had practice last night with our 7th and 8th grade team. Bunch of great young men learning the game of football and just turning into good high school athletes. I asked them, because I heard this from one of my other coaches, shout out Coach Pelham. I asked them, do you know when the trash day is? And surprisingly enough, they all answered, and they all knew when the trash day was. And that's so huge, because if you know when the trash day is, that means you're taking out the trash for your family, right? That means you're making your bed. That means you're putting your laundry in the laundry basket, right? That means you're doing all of those things that your parents ask you of, and it makes life that much easier. Quit fighting it. Quit fighting your parents. Just do it. Dude, it makes everything so much easier. And it helps too, because yet again, when you're off in college, you have to do all of those things. Oh, and it's so funny. Oh, I'm in college, I don't do my laundry, and I just leave them on the floor. Yeah, give me a break. Do your laundry. Like, be a human being. Like, grow up. Start being an adult, and start helping out around the house. Next, we're going to talk about how are you helping in your community. Okay, so this is a big one. Are you giving back? Like, are you volunteering? Are you helping in your free time with kids' athletics or YMCA or this? Because as one of those kids that loved having someone around, or like having like older kids give back and help with me, was so fun and huge for me, and it's made such a great impact on my life that was something that I wanted to make sure that I was doing, is making sure that I can impact kids' lives and make sure that they have a role model to look up to, whether it's in athletics or just being a good person in our community. And so one of those things is going, like with the SoCal Coyotes, we go school to school, and we talk and do public speaking to elementary schools and middle schools and all that. And I'm one of those people that I was very shy at first. I am a shy person in general, right? So I didn't really like talking in front of big crowds and doing all of those things. And it was one of those things that really, once I kept doing it, it really helped me break out of my shell and get me out of my comfort zone, and help me be a better public speaker in front of those kids. And it's so funny because me and Coach Miller would laugh. Like, I mean, shoot, I can stand in a pocket versus cover zero and get a free runner on a blitz, but I can't stand in front of a bunch of 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds and speak to them, right? So it's just funny, the different things that scare us, or the different issues that we have to try to overcome. So get out of your comfort zone. Go help. get back into your community, because it's so funny. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it now, because we see it all the time. Every pro athlete does it. Every pro athlete is giving back to their community one way or the other, whether it's where they grew up in their hometown or whether it's the new city that's has adopted them, right? So it just proves that kind of pull and influence you have on a community as a student, as athlete, as a figurehead in your community, you can do some really amazing things, and it really doesn't take much effort, and it does end up helping you and benefiting you, because that's deep down is something that's great for you and growing up and maturing and becoming a great adult in life. And so I know I've said this one before, but with great power comes great responsibility, and that is so huge, to be able to use that power for good and being able to be responsible for the people in your community. And that is the last bit I have here for being, just not just an athlete, not just being a student athlete, just being a good person in general, and how that can help you in the long run. But one thing I did want to go over lastly before we close out, nailed that straw. That's some money water right there. Shout out Big Rock Golf and Pub. They have the tastiest water anywhere. But no, before we close out, because this is one thing that really kind of bugs me, and it was something that I grew up with quite a bit in the Valley. And it's a negativity towards someone else, like towards someone else's goals. And we talk about people always overcoming all of these obstacles, and athletes overcoming things that they had in their lives. But one thing that people don't really talk about is how there are so many people around that want to see you fail, that just talk about things to make you look bad, or like in a negative light. And I want to make sure that as adults, and as you see students and student athletes and young youth growing up in the community, and they have these huge aspirations, don't knock them for it. Embrace them and tell them that they can do it, and give them those lofty goals, because when you have something that is such a high goal, you shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars, I think is like the quote like that, right? So don't be putting kids down. If they want to make it to the NFL, tell them you'll make it to the NFL, but you got to do all of these things right. If you want to play professional sports, you got to do these things right. If you want to be a doctor, you got to do these things right. You should never tell a kid they can't, or as a young kid, you should never hear you can't do this. Why? Who says? And just because that Joe Schmo over there from wherever just said, yeah, right, he'll never make it. Yeah, big deal. Okay, forget what that dude has to say, and follow what it is that you want to do, and surround yourself with the people that believe in you. And I was listening to Patrick Mahomes' NFL MVP speech, and he was so adamant about, keeping his circle tight and surrounding himself with the people that helps him be successful, not just like physically, but mentally too. Being able to be mentally clear, and being able to be surrounded in a good environment, and not such a negative environment. And so that's all I have for class today as we wrap up. I am Michael Carls. We are brought to you by Coachella's Sports and Entertainment Stadium Authority, and class is dismissed.